endemic for the fish is low. So here we can say in the northern Annam and the southern Annam, the northern Annam, the freshwater correlate to Red River or Sông Hồng, and the southern Annam freshwater ecoregion correlate to Mekong. So here we can see the connection among the paleotrenids. Here I can show you in the North Annam. And this species is represent in the north. In the perch, this is, we can say, the Seneca pecca. That is the species of perch. And another study, we can see the connect of the three population of the fish, Scaphostoma lectura, from three ecoregions around in Sông Hồng. We can see the first population is connected to Hainan Island and the North Vietnam. The second is in North Vietnam and North Vietnam. And the third is in the North Central. Three population is belong to the same species. And we can see here, I can redraw the Paleo Red River. We know that this trend is now submerged into the sea. You can see in some map, I noticed some color circle. That is the sign when I check the species sample. So from this large of the data, we published some or revised some key group of freshwater fish, especially in the stream. For example, in Horapun tubes, you know the shark fish chart. Here we base on the genetic, we align constructing some phylogenetic trees so we can know where their population. And here in some, we also delight, you can see the blue or the yellow. That is the freshwater erosion, water ecoregion I delight based on the fish sample. For example, in the Mekong Delta, it includes southern Cambodia, and southern Vietnam as well. So concluded for this section on the freshwater ecoregion, if we can say in Vietnam, if we can, for example, I'm sorry, if you can look into in the Southeast Asia, we know each color is the each freshwater ecoregion. For example, here in Myanmar, that is the Myanmar and Thailand. They have freshwater ecoregion. In Vietnam, we have Pia River, Sư Trăng River, Red River, North Annam, Southern Annam, Euphrates, Sông Trang, and Mekong Delta. Another we in Vietnam we include some freshwater ecoregion, but very small area. For example, in Phu Quoc Island, it belongs to the uh, coastal uh, coastal coastal Cambodia, or the small area in the North Vietnam is belong to uh, Hainan Island. Some some our study also published in some paper about the distribution of freshwater fish in Mekong tributaries, or the distribution of the fish in the coastal areas in Annam, for example. We also to cooperate with some people in Thailand to revise some group of the Porontus fish. That is the type of stream fish in the mountain. The second, I would like to share with you our study. That is, we based on the otolite from the fish, so we can know the migrate of the freshwater fish. For example, we you know the um, shark catfish. This is we in Vietnam we say cá bông lau or Bangladesh crayfish. This fish we know they migrate from the Mekong, from in the north in the south northeast of Thailand and Laos to Cambodia, to the Mekong Delta, to the sea as well. So the fish they can live. They have the migration in the mainstream of the Mekong. So how do we know about it? So we based on the otolite. You know, in the fish, in the head, they have a kind of the structure look like a stone, air stone. So this kind of air stone, they can accumulate the chemicals. So we analyze the chemicals in the air stone. Based on that, we know where the fish migrate in their life. So we study, we know exactly where the fish they move to the south, to the sea, or where they swim up to the Mekong for breeding. Yeah. The third study I would like to share, that is we try to use the eDNA. As we know, the environment DNA, we based on the environment DNA, we mapping the fish in the lower Mekong by we just collecting the water from the Mekong, and we use the filter to collect some DNA they extract from the fish, and based on that we can know what kind of fish. Even we don't see them, or even we can collect them, but we can collect their tissue. Yeah. And based on that, we know the freshwater fish in the Mekong River is from 60 to 90% is they are potamotromous. That means they migrate in the river. The fourth study, that is the study we work, we cooperate with the social science. We know how the market chain values of the capture fisheries in the lower Mekong. As we know, across the lower Mekong basin from the Laos, Thai, and Cambodia and Vietnam, the markup in prices paid to the fishers at the landing side and charged to the consumer in the market uh, range from the 36 to 150% on average. For example, in Cambodia and Vietnam, exhibited the similar average markup values at 104% and 112% respectively. Sometimes they range up to 600%. But in Laos and Thailand, the show a lower markup price at 36%. The fifth study I would like to introduce with you, that is our study to use the eDNA to survey the diversity of the fish in the sea. We use the site in the South Vietnam. This is the island Obscure. You can see from the Mekong Delta. Opposite his, there's the small island. So we use the eDNA. We survey surrounding this island, and we detected how diverse of the marine fish here. We just use the collect some eDNA from the marine water and filtering, and then we can divide it to 4 groups of the fish. This is represent for the 4 seascape. First is the mangrove, and then the seagrass, and third is the coral reef, and the 4 is in the harbor, that is along the sand beach. And from each habitat, we have the group of the fish. They represent for the coral reef, seagrass bed, harbor, and mangrove, and we compare with them just by using the eDNA. So we can say eDNA, the useful tool for detecting hidden and cryptic fish diversity. So this is the strong habitat partitioning review in tropical ecosystem. And the last one I would like to share, this is now we come back to the common and popular fish. They always to selling for Chinese medicine, that is a seahorse. Of course, people just collect it and selling. So we try to conserve them, but we don't know exactly how much each species, how many species they collect, and where these species occur in their habitat. So this is the start, the preliminary to study on the marine fish, on seahorse, the fishery biology of the three-spot seahorse. So as people around the world, when they see in the Vietnam, they have strong, have the image about the aquaculture. Of course, in the aquaculture is very developed in the Mekong Delta. So this is another how can I say, another sectors, the big study for the applied fisheries. So our study we have coverage with the many partners especially from the Institute of Research and Development from France, from another Florida Museum, or some fund from the Vietnam government. Thank you for your listening to my brief talk, what we do on the Fish Vietnam and fishery. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your interesting presentation. Okay, so
Okay, I think a student or some people can leave your question into the question so I can share with you. Yeah.
okay, please one question about EDA that you presented on, I'm not sure, on the research, right? Can you hear me?
If you can leave in the chat meeting group chat, because he a little bit too noisy around me, sorry. Yes, the EDNA is I don't think this is the yeah, because this is the EDNA is not how can I say, it's not uh the only the tool, but they have they it is the strong tools for us to detect water species we cannot see or we cannot collect. So the eDNA is not replaced to the other traditional method we use already, but it is a strong tool. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, now before 10, I don't know, yeah, nearly 10 years ago, this eDNA is the price when we use is very expensive, but nowadays is the price is reasonable, so we can apply it to confirm what we suspected. Yeah.
So I will translate in Thai แต่เขาบอกว่า EDA เป็นเครื่องมือที่เป็นการพิสูจน์ได้ตรงกว่าก็คือแม่นยำกว่านะครับประมาณนี้เขาเลยเลือกใช้นี่ตอนเมื่อก่อนเนี่ย EDA จะมีราคาแพงเขาะพี่หยดเนาะแต่เดี๋ยวนี้เนี่ยมันถูกแล้วบางครั้งเราก็ เทคโนโลยีมากขึ้นแม่นยำขึ้นแล้วก็หลากหลายขึ้นจริงๆอาจารย์ไม่ค่อยถนัดด้านชีวะเท่าไหร่ซึ่งอธิบายแต่ละอย่างนิดนึงถ้าอาจจะไม่แม่นเท่าพี่โอ๋เนาะถ้าเป็นเรื่องเออเห็นไหมม้าน้ำว่าสุดใจม้าน้ำไหมสิฮอต yes ฟังแล้วหมดเลยว่ะอยากรู้อะไรเกี่ยวกับม้าน้ำไหมเขาเอาไปทำอะไรม้าน้ำเขาทำที่เวียดนามเขาผลิตแล้วส่งไปไหนไปทำอะไรเรือยาจีนเนี่ยอู้ฟังรู้เรื่องเก่งมากอ่ะมีคำถามอะไรอีกไหมอยากรู้ไหมว่าที่เวียดนามเขามีการตลาดยังไงนะเอาง่ายๆไหมอธิบายให้เห็นภาพเนาะ
There's the seahorse. This seahorse, the marketing, they collect very a lot. And of course, they collect in buy from fishermen, and they sell directly to some medicine shop, especially from the Chinese medicine. And when uh, when we study about them, we have to go to the medicine and the local fishermen. Yes, of course, this study is going on, and I think uh, some student, if they're interesting, so we can cooperate to study about it. Yep.
เออเราการต้องเรื่องที่เข้าไปนะครับเขาบอกว่าซีโฮสเนี่ยมันเป็นธรรมชาติที่เวียดนามเยอะมากเขาก็ไปจับจากธรรมชาติมาแล้วก็ไปขายตามร้านยาที่เวียดนามโดยตรงเลยซึ่งคนที่จับก็จะเป็นฟิชเชอร์แมนเนาะอ่าเพราะว่าเวียดนามเขาก็จะได้รับอิทธิพลจากจีนเยอะใช่ไหมครับพี่โอเนาะที่เวียดนามเขาจะมีวัฒนธรรมจีน มีคำถามไหมครับหมดแล้วได้เพราะเดี๋ยวเขาก็จะไปทะเลแล้ว so professor can you hear me
Yeah, I can hear you.
so I think so now they can they ask me later because I know you have something to do on 11 right
Yeah.
so can
Uh,
if they have some question I will send you later is that okay
okay, thank you. I will answer everything. A student can leave the question to me. I will answer you later. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you so much Thank you so much for today. Thank you for your very welcome lectures.
Yeah.
Say thank you, Lagamai. Thank you, bye-bye. So hope we can meet each other even now, Tyson. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Professor.
thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Okay, understand? Are you understand? Yes, that's said they understand clearly, especially for seafood, they're very interesting because in Chiang Mai, there is no the ocean in Chiang Mai.
Okay.
So for the seafoods, a little bit new for them.
Okay. Hope to see you in next year in Chiang Mai. I will join the conference hosted by Professor Abhinun.
อาจารย์กดOkay, thank you so much. Bye bye. Okay, so next is the case from Indonesia. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, so I will introduce you a little bit in Thai language.
Okay.
อันนี้คือเพื่อนของอาจารย์ที่เรียนมาด้วยกันที่ฮอกไกโดเนาะแต่เขาอยู่อินโดนีเซียอ่าวันนี้เขาก็จะมาพูดเหมือนกับคร่าวๆเรื่องการประมงในอินโดนีเซียนะครับก็เอาเลยเนาะ Are you ready? Yes. So they are the second year student, bachelor student, second grade. Oh. Okay, so could you introduce yourself and I think you can start from now.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Khan. Thank you for inviting me to this mini conference, and hello everyone. Let me share the slide. Can you see the slide now?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was invited, the topic was fisheries in Indonesia. So it was a pretty broad topic, but hopefully maybe today I will talk a bit about maybe some history and maybe some condition in Indonesia regarding the marine fishery. So my talk will be divided into maybe five sections. The first, I will introduce myself. The second, maybe a bit of oceanographic and historical background of Indonesia fishery. The third is how ethnic diversity and traditional practices affect um, of the fishery in Indonesia, but mostly probably just specific. I won't talk about maybe the general trend, but just specific cases. The fourth, I will talk about the current fishery condition, maybe some examples. And then the fifth, I will talk about my own current research, how stock health and habitat and blue economy play a role in the fishery in Indonesia. So I'm a lecturer from the School of Life Science and Technology in Bandung. So here is a map. Can everyone there can see the pointer, the red dot?
Yes.
Okay. So I live in Bandung. So it's a city, but it's actually far away from the ocean. So it's pretty hard for me to go to my ecosystem research. I have to maybe roughly 100 kilometers to go to the beach. It's very close to the capital of Indonesia, which is Jakarta. And here is Bali, because usually when I say I'm from Indonesia, most of people um they only know about Bali. So I don't live near Bali, but it's still very close. So my research field is about aquatic ecosystem. So, but my focus is about ecosystem process modeling. So it's quite hard if um because I need to learn many ecosystems. Like here I show there's a mangrove, and then here there's a picture of a seagrass, and here is a picture of there's a lake in Java which has many cage-based aquaculture. So all of these are very different ecosystem and with very different processes and maybe biodiversity. So my research is focuses on the how does some ecosystem processes, like for example production and productivity, how is that differs, or is there any similarity, and can we model it? So now I will talk about the second section, which is the Indonesia sea condition and its historical background. So maybe some of you are not familiar, even though maybe we are neighbors, um, but maybe are not familiar with all of the islands in Indonesia. So Indonesia roughly have maybe 17,000 or more islands. Uh, and the capital city is Jakarta. So this star is Bandung, where I live now. So it's the fourth largest country in the world in terms of population, with a population more than 288 million. But most of those population lives in Java Island. So Java Island, I think, is the number one most populated island. So most of the other islands, so here in yellow, um, the the yellow the ones with the yellow letters is the five main islands in Indonesia. So from the west is Sumatra, and then there's Java on the south, and then there's Borneo, and then Sulawesi or Celebes, and then Papua. To the north of Indonesia, we have the Philippines, and then to the maybe um, northwest, we have the mainland Asia, where we have like the Peninsula Malaysia, Thailand, where you are, and Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And to the south, there's Australia. So the position of Indonesia affects its fishery condition as well. So I will discuss it more later. And maybe one thing that is famous for Indonesia, it's part of the Coral Triangle. But here I don't show the exact triangle because there I think there's still some debate on the range of the Coral Triangle. Maybe some of you can raise your hand if you have you ever heard of the term the Coral Triangle? No one. So I think everyone is this is their first time hearing the term of the Coral Triangle. So the Coral Triangle um is a term where the highest density of corals found in the world besides the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So the Coral Triangle encompasses from Philippines, Indonesia, and there are some reports that also include Malaysia and Singapore into the Coral Triangle, but some other paper only includes Philippines and this part, the eastern part of Indonesia. So I think there's still some debate on how big is the Coral Triangle. Next, because Indonesia is very long from west to east, it's divided into three different time zones. But because I live in the western part, GMT plus 7, so we have the same time zone with Bangkok and Thailand. So thankfully, there's no problem with scheduling this presentation. But in other parts of the Indonesia, the time zones maybe it's a lot more earlier than from Thailand. So because of the position of Indonesia, Indonesia is positioned between two main continents, and connected. It connects Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. It creates a different, or not different, a unique habitat for fishery. And particularly the effect of this position, it has lower salinity. And because it's positioned in the tropical region, this lower salinity comes from the high precipitation. So the water mostly comes from the Pacific Ocean. Will go through the Indonesian archipelago. But because there's so much rain in this region, the salinity lowers. And then when it goes through Indonesia and into the Indian Ocean, it has a different salinity. So it will affect also some of the, so it becomes like a gradient of salinity. So we call this movement of water from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean the Indonesian through flow. So not only is the water density or salinity is affected by the position, but there's also a factor of seasonality because of the position of the main continent. So during June to August, the sea surface temperature tends to be much more colder, and particularly near around Java. And this is makes sense because in June and August, Australia is having winter. So the southern hemisphere are experiencing winter. It makes the ocean cooler, and this cool ocean, causes an upwelling to the north. So it affects Indonesia. And how does it affect Indonesia? It also affects the climate. So there are less precipitation because the ocean is much more colder. So there's less evaporation to feed the rain clouds. So here right now is August. We're experiencing a dry season. And also during this period of low precipitation, because there's not much rain clouds, so there's an increase also in chlorophyll. Um, and then in the December to February, so maybe roughly 6 months from now, the opposite will happen. So when it's uh, summer in Australia, but it's winter in the mainland of Asia, like in Thailand or in Vietnam and in China, you will experience winter. It will also affect Indonesia. So the north side of Indonesia will become much more colder, and the south part of Indonesia will be um, warmer. So this is causing a downwelling, and also the currents will change, particularly for this sea area, and then this will increase the sea surface temperature and also increase precipitation, causing the rainy season. So this is sometimes why I think our seasons are opposite from each other. If I'm not, if I'm not, if I'm not misremembering, that in the mainland during your season, when you are in the rainy season, we are in the dry season, and when you are in the dry season, Indonesia will experiencing rainy season, if I'm not mistaken. But however, the in terms of the oceanographic conditions, particularly the data, um, there's still lack of measurements. But because of the large scale of area that we have to encompass, so we can see in this picture. So this is taken from Purba et al. 2025. So the red dots are where there are a lot of measurements, particularly like water quality, like temperature and salinity. And we can see in some countries, for example, like near the peninsula of Malaysia and off the coast of Vietnam, there are many red dots indicating that those areas are studied very well and measured. There's a lot of data in those areas. But sadly, for Indonesia, there are some locations that there are many data, but still most of it are still in the green as in there is still less data. And because Indonesia, because of its position, it's affected by the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. It's also affected by interannual climate patterns, such as the El Nino. Like currently, I think we're experiencing El Ninos, I think still until the end of the year, and also the Indian Ocean dipole, which makes the Indonesian weather very uncertain. Even though we are experiencing dry season, I think yesterday we had rain. I think a few days we had rain. So it becomes very unpredictable. And the climate change situation also increased this unpredictability in weather. So yeah, because of the scale of Indonesian oceans, they're still lacking. There's too much unknowns and it's hard to predict. So next, I will move on to the third section of my talk, ethnic diversity, traditional practices, and FADs. So maybe if you're not familiar, Indonesia is a multicultural, multi-ethnic country. I think we have more than 300 languages. We have more than we have hundreds of ethnic groups. So we're maybe different from other countries where maybe you only have one majority ethnic group, but in Indonesia we have several ethnic groups. For example, you can see that this is all five different ethnic groups from different main islands, and you can see the guy on the very right side. He has a very dark skin color because he's not how do you say in terms of um race. He's part of the Melanesian race. The Aboriginals. He is much more closely related to Aboriginals in Australia and like in Fiji and in the Pacific rather to Asians. So the other four are much more closely related to the people in the mainland Asia. So much more closely maybe to the people in Thailand compared to the guy on the right side. But still, everyone is part of the same country because we have a uniting language that is the Bahasa Indonesia. However, because we have a diverse ethnic group, we also have like different practices in fisheries. But maybe I will only show you just a few examples. The first one may be one of the famous ethnic group that is the Bajau people. Um, some people have termed them as the Aquaman or Atlantis. Why? Because besides they live really literally on the water using stilts, they're very closely related to the coastal ecosystem and they're very good divers. They can hold their breath. I forgot how long, but um, I think most of the population can hold their breath very long because their livelihood depends on fishing and particularly spearfishing. So they still practice spearfishing and they live near this area just southeast of the Sulawesi, this K-shaped island. So they live here. Um, However, they live near a national park, and because of their traditional practices, their local knowledge, and their beliefs, their fishing practices actually conserve the ecosystem and actually promote conservation. So it's a very green-oriented, sustainable. So as everyone knows, maybe currently in our modern era, everyone wants to be sustainable in their industry. However, the people of the Bajau people have already living sustainable green practices of fishing. So next, maybe I will show you some other practices that are not like this. This is just a single example in Indonesia, sadly. So this is another fishing practice. I'm not sure whether or not it's also in Thailand coastal waters, but here it's called bagan in Indonesia or lift net. So let me see if I can play the video. It does not seem that I can play the video. So this is a video I've taken when I was going to a field study. So you can see there's a lot of ships and boats. So this area is near a port. So it's a very busy coastal area. So this is called a bagan. So in as you can see, the sea here is very shallow. So you can build uh constructions like this just using bamboo. Although I'm not really sure how stable it is, whether or not if there are big waves, does it does it rock is it affected by the waves? I'm not sure. I've never been on top of it. But yeah, it was first introduced by the Bugis and Makassar people. So it's also from the big island from before. So this K island, the Bugis and Makassar people are from this big island, and they have this practice of building bagan. So bagan, they use it to catch fish, and fish, and squid. And usually they have lamps. Now they have lamps. So because lamps can attract, especially squid at night, and they have nets, if you can see. So the net, they will use the net to catch the all those fish and shrimp and squid that is attracted by the bagan. And but now it's already a common practice, especially in Java Sea, because in Java Sea the ocean depth, not the sea depth, is relatively shallow compared to the rest of the seas around Indonesia. So that's why they can construct bagan. This is the video it's playing. So you can see it. Uh, However, this bagan is located near a very crowded shipping area, but still, people, and there are multiple. So in a certain area, there can be a multiple bagan. Another example of fishing practices is fish aggregating devices. In Bahasa, we call it rumpon. I think this is not only unique for Indonesia. I know some papers that also, there are also papers reported that in Africa they also have a practice of rumpon or fish aggregating devices. But maybe the unique thing in Indonesia is some locations they have huts where people can live there. So here you can see in the picture on the left, there's a hut, and here a, a single person, single man or boy, they will stay here for months. Why do they do that? But this practice, I think, is not only in Indonesia. I think in the Philippines also they have this practice, particularly in that sea area, because um, if you don't protect the fish aggregating devices, there are some ships that will take the fish around this uh device, or this like buoy like construction. So what does it do? So it will put like palm tree, not palm tree, a palm tree leaf. They will attach the palm tree leaf to the fish aggregating devices, FAD, and somehow this palm tree will attract, especially tuna. So the FAD attract tuna. So actually, our colleague, Dr. Khan, and me, we have a colleague that's actually actively working on this topic. He's using acoustic methods in trying to understand the swimming pattern of uh, tuna fish, because we still don't really understand why does the tuna this behavior. Why as simple as just putting a palm tree leaf under FAD can attract fish. We're still not sure about the ecology or the interaction between those two. But yeah, because of the people can kill the fish, people will hire men to stay in the hut, and this is a very probably is a scary job because this part of the ocean, so it's located usually in the north of this island. This part of the seas are very turbulent. There are certain periods where the seas have very high waves, so it can be very scary for the person who's living there. But I think the pay is very high. That's why there's an economic incentive or why people want to do this dangerous job. So previously in the first I mentioned about the Bajau people and how they have a sustainable way of fishing. Sadly, in Indonesia, there are still many practices, even until this not this year, but a few years before using fish bombs. So I'm not sure whether or not fish bombs and poison are still used in Thailand. Um, but yeah, in Indonesia, because of it's so many islands and so many people and so many, it's very a huge country. We still have a lack in or encouragement or deterrent in people to not use destructive fishing, especially using bombs, because like the picture here on the left, you can show that the coral reefs are the most affected because they're yeah it promotes like coral bleaching or even destroying the habitat because of using explosives or even like um using poison cyanide. Usually it's also using cyanide, which is a bit foolish because cyanide it can also um accumulate in the fish where you're trying to catch, and it becomes hazardous to the fish, to the people who will buy the fish, because now it's already contaminated with cyanide. So it's a very dangerous practice, but sadly some locations are still using it, even though there are already like regulations and rules, but still the enforcement um are not effective. Yeah, people are not deterred uh, to not use these practices. And even though maybe the environment is destroyed, but also it is hazard to the person who's using it. I was conflicted whether or not I want to show the picture, but this is taken from an article in Manga Bay. So so the person taken a picture of the one of the fishermen who uses the destructive fishing, and you can see um, his left hand is um, it's not there anymore. So he doesn't have a left hand, and it's because the bomb detonated before before it reaches the water. So it detonated near his hand. So it's a very hazardous practice. So the section 4, now we'll enter what is the current trend or the fishery condition in Indonesia. So in Indonesia itself, how does it regulate um, the area? Because we have so many seas and it's very wide, a wide area. It's divided by this fishing management area or FMA. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 fishing management areas. And this is to better manage the fishing and marine resources. However, when and this is determined by the Ministry of Fisheries of Indonesia, but when they put this segments or zones, when they put the lines, for example, between 712 and 711, the line bordering them, uh, it's a arbitrarily set. So it was not based on any oceanographic or ecological data or assessment. So maybe there are still many questions or maybe not weaknesses, but maybe holes or gaps in using FMA. But at least for now, there is a much more order, or it can be monitored because the ministry they have to put resources in how much effort and how much people and how much money to which area they can allocate resources much more efficiently, even though maybe this system or model are not perfect yet. But hopefully there are some research like in the ministry and in academia in trying to assess whether or not this current FMA is the most suitable for Indonesia. And talking about the trend in production, so the production in Indonesia may be quite different from other developed countries like Japan and Europe. For example, Japan and Europe, I don't have the data shown here, but you can find it you can find it online in Google, where there are now a crisis in decreasing stock in almost every species, like in tuna, in squid, in other pelagic marine species. They are decreasing stock. However, for Indonesia, actually, there's still even some increasing in all FMA. So the different colors here are the based on the FMA, different FMA. So I only show four big categories: the big pelagic fishes, small pelagic fishes, big pelagic fishes, and tunas. And I only highlight maybe like this orange one for the pelagic fishes. There's this orange, and this is the Java Sea. This makes sense because in the Java Sea there are more people. That means there are more fishermen that catches the fish. That's why they have a very large, compared to the other FMAs, a high production of fishes. But for tunas, the highest is FMA 715, this purple one, and it's increasing until 2020. And I will discuss this in the next slide. But yeah, for tunas, there's a special place where they have a very high production for tuna and other tuna species. But for Indonesia, compared to the rest of the world, uh, I think we still have a lot of uh, fish stock. And what makes FMA 715 have a very production of tuna is because of a town, a modern fishery town, Bitung. So Bitung is located at the north of Sulawesi Island. Again, this K-shaped island. I think you're probably much more familiar now with this particular island in Indonesia because of its strange K shape. But there's a town in the north called Bitung where they have a very modern, uh, already modern process in not only capturing but also storing and um, post processing of the tuna because their main focus of the tuna is to export. So most of the tuna maybe in other countries like in the US and Europe, maybe they will come from this particular town. So it's not actually a city, it's a town. So it's the population and most of the population there are actively working in this industry, in this tuna producing industry. And what's interesting, the location is also bordering the 715 and 716 FMA. Um, so that's one thing to be noted. And they and this town in particular, it can produce up to maybe 200,000 tons of tuna and skipjack. But one of its main selling point is because they have a cold storage and post harvesting process procedure. So because this is still a rarity in Indonesia, sadly, but I think for this year, the Ministry of Fisheries are trying to implement more cold storages in many other fisheries towns because that's currently the main problem in Indonesia. We don't have enough cold storages for the high production, the sudden rise in maybe catchment. So compared to the rest of the world in terms of tuna, I think this data is already a bit outdated, but I think this is just a good comparison. How does Indonesia compare to the rest of the world and the other countries? Still, here we can see that in maybe 2007, Japan is still the highest producer of tuna in the world in 2007. But still, Indonesia and also the Philippines, the neighboring country, we're already one of the top producing tuna, even in the 2000s. And based on the previous data from before, the production of the tuna, I think we're already maybe one of the top five tuna producing. Uh, but yeah, why the sudden increase of tuna production is not because we don't have stock. I mean, compared to Japan, you can see that Japan, there's a decreasing trend in where they're producing tuna. But for Indonesia, we have a very high potential to increase our production because our technology are still, I think, compared to the rest of the world, are still outdated. I think there's a report where most of the fishermen in Indonesia still use traditional fishing. So I will show a picture of what kind of boat actually the fishermen in Indonesia majority uses. And most of the towns where the fish are gathered and distributed, they don't have a cold storage and post-harvest facility that can increase the value of the fish catchments. And not only tuna, but for other marine products. So actually for Indonesia, I think the most important is not to further research, but to further implementation of already existing technology, because this technology is already, I think it's already common in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, but we still need more work to be done in Indonesia in that regard. However, even though previously I said that I think we still have a lot of potential, uh, the increase of catchment will also increase the risk of stock decline. So there's a study that uses uh, previous report for CPUE and the spawning potential rate. So so they use these two index to see which areas are the most risk. But they only look at demersal fishes species. Well, we can see on the left graph that most of it, they don't really have a decreasing trend. It's mostly stable throughout the year. And even like Lujanus etroterus, it has an increasing trend of uh of catchment. So, but there are some demersal fish that are decreasing, having a decreasing trend in CPUE. And we can see in the graph on the right, they calculated there are some areas where for certain species of fish, there's a very high risk of unsustainability or overcatching. So I think Indonesia, besides increasing or improving its technology in catching and also post-production, also need to be aware to not fall down the pitfall of other countries of overcatching. So I think research in assessing whether or not we still have a sustainable stock and population of fishes is also important. So we have a threshold of how if is it too much. So like I mentioned that we Indonesia currently have a dilemma. We want to increase our production, so we have more exports to other countries because the demand is still increasing. The demand is still there, and uh, as you can see, like the picture on the left, this is most of the boats. The boats are still made out of wood material, but this type of boat, maybe they can't really handle the most turbulent sea. And especially in Indonesia, there are certain seasons where the seas are very, the waves are very high, especially maybe near the Indian Ocean or near the Pacific Ocean that's much more exposed to the ocean. The winds can be very high and the waves can be very high. So it's hazardous. Fishermen tend to not can't go to the sea and the ocean, can't catch a fish, and this is also a very big problem. But there are some areas where we try to introduce like uh, not plastic, but is it fiberglass, a much more modern boat, but they tend to reluctant. So there's also a social aspect in where there's a reluctance of the fishermen themselves in modernization of their ships or facilities. And also the economic situation in which they don't really have the capital in improving their ships. Um, so that's also there's aspect. So it's not only the technology part, but also the social economic part. So it's a very multidisciplinary problem. And I don't think this is special in Indonesia. I think several countries as well still have mostly traditional way of fishing. But the ministry, like this in the picture on the right, shows that the ministry are trying to encourage the fishermen and by maybe giving them like capital or facilities or technology to increase the catchment and hopefully the livelihood of this fishermen. On on another spectrum, the ministry also have some projects regarding marine coastal environment. So in particular, like this conservation and implementation of marine protected areas. So this is in the 715 location. As we can see, the purple is the protected area. So while it's good, this area is important to be protected because most of them are coral reefs, which is important for refuge and spawning. It provides a lot of ecosystem services, both to the environment and to the biodiversity and also to the people over there. But also there's a conflict with the fishermen because in these marine protected areas, fishermen can't fish there. So it's a it's a dilemma where we want to conserve a certain area, but sadly the local people who lives there and maybe depend on that certain location, they aren't allowed to do fishing or to catch anything that where they rely on as a source of income, source of food. So it's a very tricky situation. Which one should we prioritize? That there's no a clear answer. So another problem in Indonesia is the illegal, unreported, and unregulated. So in the map on the left, we can see that there are these circles. It shows the where cases of illegal fishing. And sadly, these illegal fishing, though some are from within the country, so domestic illegal fishing, but there are some also that are from international or neighboring countries. So they come illegally into Indonesian water. So sadly, this is the only that we know of or reported or caught. But because Indonesia seas are very big, it's very hard to allocate a lot of money uh, to really monitor all of these things. But hopefully with the improvement, now we have like remote sensing and satellite observation and probably that hopefully in the few years can improve in monitoring and catching illegal fishing in Indonesia. So I'm just a brief show. I think I'm already over the time. Just a brief condition about the mariculture. So we also have mariculture in Indonesia, but I don't think we have. I don't think Indonesia is the number one. I think other countries have much more sophisticated technology in terms of mariculture and aquaculture. But I just want to mention that we also have a seaweed mariculture industry. Although this is the distribution is not very how do you say equal. Like some parts of the island, like in Sumatra, there's no seaweed production that's reported, and also the problem in seaweed mariculture in Indonesia because of the unpredictability of the ocean, the seas, and the climate. The value when we export the seaweed, it can be highly fluctuate yearly, and this is not really good for the farmers because you want your products to have a stable because you can calculate for next year how much capital, how much effort should I do to sell. So if the next year or this year the value decreases, even though how I produce a lot, but then I don't really get profit that much. So the value instability compounded by disease and unpredictable weather, and now we have climate change. So this is another topic that's very hard to tackle in terms of seaweed marine culture in Indonesia. Another industry that's already been around, I think, hundreds of years are pearl production. I think Indonesia is one of the maybe top five of the pearl production in the world. But however, some pearl species, especially like the South Sea pearls, are in decline, even though like since 2005, 43% of the this kind of pearl are produced from Indonesia. So this decline, we still don't know whether or not is it because the production or the sea environment. So yes, we also have the pearl production in Indonesia. And finally, final section, I will talk about what is I'm actually researching. So before I gave a very broad and general overview of what is the fishery in Indonesia looks like, what are the problems, what are the potential, and what is the current condition. So this section is much more related to what I'm doing with my research. So the first one of my this is a collaboration research with the BRIN. So BRIN is the main research institute in Indonesia. It's a government institute. And one of the researcher there, her research is about using parasite in fish stock. So as Professor Hui before, in the presentation before, he mentions about otoliths. So in determining fish stock, there are four methods. I think maybe all of you already familiar. Maybe the first one is using length and weight as the most uh, basic method in determining the fish stock and fish population. And then the second is you can use otolith, and the third is using genetics. However, maybe otoliths and genetics, you'll require special equipment and training. You need some training to determine accurately the fish population and fish stock. And like Professor Hui said, yes, PCR now and genetic approaches are much more affordable than COVID. However, it's still maybe a lot expensive, especially when like managers want to determine a large number of fish stock. It's like maybe more than 30 fish per location. So if you want like five location and you have 30 fish, then it can add up a lot because you have to test the genetics of each fish. So if you don't have the budget, it can still be very expensive depending on what kind of research. But for fish stock, I think genetic is still very expensive, even for monitoring, particularly if you want to monitor every month. So you have 12 months, five locations, 30 fish, and just a single species. So if you want to monitor the fish stock of several commercially important species, then it can add up a lot. So this researcher and I she developed, and I think one of the collaborators also from Australia developed a way using parasites, especially parasite communities. And okay, how parasite community can separate different populations. So I can't really show, maybe in the next slide, I will show some parts of the results, but this is just one paper in how do we actually differentiate the population of a species. So for example, the Gutierrez in 2023 published a paper where they used squid. They identified parasites in squid. So this is off the coast of Argentina in South America. Here they identified there's four cohorts. So they already identified that there's four areas, a spawning area, and also a stock. So they already identified four stocks. They just want to confirm through parasite community. And the graph on the right is the NMDS plot. This one uses abundance, so they use the Bray-Curtis distance, while this one they use present and absent, the Jacquard, and it shows that yes, there's a clear separation using parasite community, and the parasite community that they identified, there are 5 nematodes, 4 Cestoda, 2 Digeneas, and 1 isopod. and most of them are identified up to genus level. So using parasite, you don't need to up to like species level because sometimes it's very hard because these parasites it can be very small, and if you try to dissect them from the organ, they will disintegrate, and it will become very hard to identify even up to a genus level. But thankfully, you don't need to go to the species level because the clear separation using the community can also uh, can clearly show that, oh yeah, you can identify which stock is different. But in this paper, they only use endoparasite. And so what does it mean for endoparasites? So endoparasites are parasites that's within the body cavity. So like in the stomach, intestine, and usually the muscle. But for this approach, you usually don't check the muscle. You only check the stomach and the intestine. Okay, so this is the just parts of the result of the research. So I can't show everything because we're not yet published. So we're currently under review. So you can see that I only show four types of parasite. So this is in the mackerel tuna or Euthynos affinis. So this is commonly in fish in Indonesia. I don't know how common is it in Thailand. Uh, but here we identified there's I think up to 16 or 17 species of parasites, where some of them are exoparasites. So exoparasites are parasites that usually just attach outside or in the gills. Okay, why the gills are considered the external part of a body? Because that is where the water filters. So from the mouth and then it comes out, it filters through the gills. And any parasite that attach to the gills, they have a potential to be detached. And because they can detach, they tend to be not a really good biomarker for the stock. But still, in this research, we still want to know whether or not it can still be useful to know the abundance or the presence of these types of parasites in the gills. So, for example, the exoparasites are usually Caligus and Pseudocygnus, and it makes sense because both of these are, how do you say, like arthropods. Um, so arthropods, they're just too big to go inside the body, so they usually just cling uh, in the gills. While endoparasites are tend to be like worms, nematodes. So here we have Bulbosoma and Anisakis simplex. So I think Anisakis simplex is the most common parasite because almost every fish has Anisakis simplex. And if you ever had food poisoning from fish, if you ever eaten fish and then you got diarrhea after that, there's probably Anisakis simplex in the fish that causes you because Anisakis simplex it can produce like not toxin but we can have a sort of bad reaction to the Anisakis simplex. So bad fish that already affected with Anisakis is a health hazard. So monitoring Anisakis simplex is not only for stock management purposes but also for food safety as well. So another part of my research, because I'm an ecologist, mostly ecosystem ecologist, I study about mangroves and seagrass. So here's a picture of mangroves and seagrass in Indonesia, particularly in Sapura Island, Maluku. And this is some corals in Tunda Island in Banten, Java. Okay, why do I particularly study these ecosystems? Because they usually appear together. They appear in mangrove, seagrass, and coral reef and offshore water. Uh, and here, this diagram shows that these ecosystems, when they are adjacent to each other, uh, they have a connectivity, as in usually there's a transport of material and uh, fishes. Fish also, organisms can also uh, how to say, migrate from one ecosystem from another. And then we try to understand whether or not how critical are these, how important are these ecosystems to the stock of the fishery. So also there's a term in Indonesia, it's called blue carbon. So blue carbon is focuses on climate change mitigation. So why is blue carbon can be used for climate change mitigation? Because two of these ecosystems, but maybe corally as well. So maybe three of these ecosystems, they sequester carbon. Okay, what is sequestering carbon mean? Sequestration means it traps carbon. So as we know that climate change is driven by the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but these types of ecosystem like the mangroves and the seagrass and the coral reef, so they can fixate or they can take the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they transfer into the water and then they fixate into organic carbon through photosynthesis. And then when they, how you say, parts of them get released, like the leaves on the trees of the mangroves, they detach and they die. They can be decomposed into the sediment. However, because the sediment in the coastal areas, they tend to be anoxic or lack oxygen. So the carbon in that leaf or in that sediment can be preserved for a very long time. So these types of ecosystems are very good in mitigating or absorbing as a sink for carbon. So there is currently a trend in Indonesia as well where because we have so many mangroves, and I think it's not only Indonesia but Southeast Asia because Southeast Asia has the highest density of mangroves. So there's opportunity for countries that have mangrove and seagrass to be to participate in blue carbon and blue economy because by preserving this habitat, we can actually have like this is much more economic research, but you can actually like evaluate how much US dollars. So if we protect this mangrove, okay, how much potential carbon we can absorb from the atmosphere. So in layman terms, we can ask money from industries that produce carbon and then we tell them, okay, if you pay me this much amount of money, um, we can ensure the protection of this habitat. So it can help to counteract your carbon dioxide activity, producing activity. That's basically the main idea of this blue carbon framework. But also the side effect is because we're trying to preserve blue carbon, it also conserves the habitat. And because the habitat provides many ecosystem services and ecosystem regulation, it can also protect the spawning area and hopefully fish stock. So everything is connected in coastal and marine ecosystem. So this is just a key takeaway or summary from my talk today. Indonesia fisheries are shaped by its geography, cultural diversity, not just the policy. There's already existing fisheries management area, but maybe the implementation, there are still holes in them. So parasites can offer a biological signal of declining stock. It can be an alternative to other methods in determining its stock. Habitat conservation addresses root causes. So there's an importance also in preserving important ecosystem. And blue carbon and blue economy can be a good framework, not only in conservation, but also climate change mitigation and improving fishermen livelihoods. And sustainable fisheries need integrated solution across stock, habitat, and economy. So that is all from me. Thank you. Terima kasih. I'm sorry if I'm over the time. It's almost 12 now. If you have any questions,
Good.
ว่าเปิดยากแค่ไหนเอาคนเรา
Thank
Thank you so much ชื่ออะไรนะ
Okay, so much Dr. Kelvin, right? Democracy. Also, and that's really open this morning yet because I have another program. So many morning. Thank you so much for to join many things you have done in the country. In Thailand also we have in the south of Thailand from the marine fisheries and also marine aquaculture. Here we have some. Maybe in the future, I may invite you to visit us in Chiang Mai and also we have another campus in south Thailand, like nearby in Surat Thani, in Chumpon. You can visit and we can join our project. Maybe we can talk about our research in the future. And May we have exchange our student to visit your student can be visit here and also your my student can be visit your university and make some them to have good friends in the future. A lot of my students try to understand and also thank you so much again for your nice presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for inviting me. Yes,
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Hopefully in the future I can come to Chiang Mai.
Yeah, of course. We have sit down in Chiang Mai. Now he have done so many things every day, so it's easy for him. Okay, thank you so much. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you.
พวกเรามีอะไรกันถามไหมไม่มีการถามโอเคทีมงานซี
Okay, so there's no question, so I can. Oh, there's few questions.
No.
Oh no, okay, okay, thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
ภาษาอินโดนีเซียว่ารีโมกาซีเดี๋ยวถึงเวลาแล้วส่งไปหาเมียทวีโทของเราใครสนใจโอเคเดี๋ยวส่งงานที่สรุปนะครับแล้วก็ต้องฝึกตัวเองละตอนนี้พวกเราได้รับการฝึกอย่างน้อย2 ชั่วโมงที่นั่งฟังอยู่รู้เรื่องบ้าง